My boyfriend humiliated me in front of his friends at a fancy restaurant dinner, dumped me, and left me with a $450 bill. As he left, he said I was lucky he even bothered with me. I smiled, paid, and walked out. But this morning, my phone was blowing up with 19 missed calls. I'm Ellie, and last weekend feels like a bad movie I can't pause. I was with Connor for 3 years. 3 years of dive bar karaoke nights, meeting his loud family for Christmas, and stealing his hoodies because they smelled like him. We weren't flawless. He'd nitpick my outfits, saying my skirts were too short or my hair was too wild. I thought it was just him being picky. God, I was clueless. Last Friday, Connor texted about dinner with his work friends. He always kept his job separate, so I was stoked. I maxed my card on a new dress and spent hours curling my hair. But when I walked into that glossy restaurant, the air felt heavy. Connor's eyes flicked over me, and his smirk wasn't the one I loved. Something was off. What was he about to pull? I slid into the booth, the leather cold against my legs, and Connor barely nodded. His buddies, Max and Tyler, gave me this weird glance like I was intruding. Connor leaned back, sipping his beer, and said, "Bold dress, Ellie. Trying to stand out?" My stomach nodded. I'd picked a deep green dress I thought was classy, but his tone made me feel tacky. I laughed it off. Did I miss the memo on the vibe? He shrugged, saying they'd already ordered apps. The next hour was brutal. Connor rambled about work deals I couldn't follow, cutting me off when I tried to chime in. I mentioned a crazy day at my bookstore job, and he scoffed. Ellie's not built for real business. Bookstores are cute, though. Max smirked, and I shrank, my wine glass suddenly super interesting. Was this the Connor I'd planned a future with? Then Tyler asked how we met, and I started to say my friend Jess set us up. Connor cut in. Jess felt sorry for her. I was doing her a favor. My heart sank. His laugh wasn't playful. What was he trying to prove? I mumbled an excuse and bolted to the bathroom, locking myself in a stall. My hands shook as I texted Jess. Is Connor always this mean, or am I tripping? My phone buzzed. Connor had posted an Instagram story, tagging the restaurant with boys' night. Like I wasn't even there. I stared at my reflection, willing myself not to cry. Just get through dinner, Ellie. I fixed my eyeliner and went back. The table went quiet when I sat, their laughs dying. Connor kept jabbing at my food choice. A pasta dish, the cheapest thing on the menu. Loading up on carbs? Huh? That's a look. Every dig cut deeper, and I barely ate, counting the seconds till I could bail. Then the bill landed. Connor slid it to me, and I thought it was a joke. Then he locked eyes with me. "We're done, Ellie. I'm not feeling it anymore." I blinked, stunned. "You're dumping me? Here?" He stood, grabbing his jacket. "A girl like you should be grateful I gave you 3 years. You're not a prize." Max and Tyler followed him out, chuckling. What had I missed about him? I sat there, the waiter's pitying glance burning as I fumbled with my card to cover the $450 tab for their steaks and cocktails. My hands shook, but I held it together until I reached my car. Then I called Jess, sobbing so hard she could barely hear me. She showed up at my place with pizza and a bottle of cheap rosé, listening as I spilled every detail. I kept replaying Connor's words, wondering how I'd ignored his jokes for years. Comments about my weight, my job, my everything. Jess got quiet, then said, "Ellie, Connor's full of it at work." Her friend Leo, who works with him, had spilled the tea. Connor wasn't some hotshot ad exec. He was a low-level assistant, screwing up presentations and dodging calls. Those big meetings he bragged about, lies, his corner office, didn't exist. I felt so stupid. 3 years, and I'd swallowed his whole persona. That night, I dug through our texts, spotting lies I'd glossed over, trips he never took, deals that never closed. At 1 a.m., Leo texted me. "Jess gave me your number. Connor's hiding more than his job." What else was he lying about? Leo met me at a diner the next morning, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. Over greasy hash browns, he laid it out. Connor was a fraud at work, faking emails to seem important, taking credit for other people's campaigns. He was on probation, one screw up from being fired. But it wasn't just work. Leo said Connor told everyone I was clingy, begging him to propose. My jaw hit the table. Me? I was the one dodging his hints about moving in together. Leo showed me texts where Connor bragged about putting me in my place at dinner. I felt sick, like the ground was slipping. How would I love this guy? Then my phone rang. Connor's mom, Diane. She was a gem, always sneaking me extra pie at family dinners. She sounded worried, asking if we were okay. Connor told her we'd had a tiff. A tiff? He'd humiliated me. She mentioned his birthday barbecue Sunday, saying he told everyone I'd be there with big news. My mind raced. He was playing happy couple to his family. Jess, who'd tagged along, grinned. "You're going, right?" I nodded, a spark igniting. What was I about to walk into? I spent the next day like a detective, screenshotting Connor's lies, posts about fake work awards, texts about emergencies that didn't add up. Jess helped me pick an outfit. A sharp navy jumpsuit Connor once said was too loud. Good. I wanted to be loud. Sunday evening, I drove to his parents' suburban house, my palms sweaty. What if they took his side? I pulled up, the backyard buzzing with relatives. Connor's dad, Greg, waved me over, clueless about the drama. The smell of grilled burgers hit me, and for a second, I missed this. His family felt like mine. Then I spotted Connor, charming his aunts with a beer in hand. His face froze when he saw me, like he'd seen a ghost. He hadn't banked on me showing. He grabbed my arm, whispering, "Why are you here?" I smiled, loud enough for his cousins to hear. "Couldn't miss your birthday, babe, especially with our news." Diane squealed, asking if we were engaged. His sister, Nora, smirked. Smelling BS, Connor's jaw tightened as Greg called us to eat. My phone buzzed. Leo, pulling up now. What was about to go down? The backyard picnic table was packed. Connor fidgeting as his family dug into potato salad. Diane gushed about Connor's big promotion, and I nearly snorted. He launched into a story about closing a huge ad deal, but when Greg asked for specifics, Connor stammered, muttering about client confidentiality. Nora rolled her eyes, and I knew she was onto him. Diane asked about our news, and Connor choked on his burger, saying we'd talk later. His grandpa, Frank, blunt as a hammer, asked if we were shacking up. Connor's lies were unraveling, and I hadn't said a word. Then the gate creaked. Leo walked in, holding a work tablet, saying Connor needed to review something urgent. Connor tried to shove him out, but Greg insisted he stay. When Greg asked about the deal, Leo paused, then said their boss led it. Connor just printed the handouts. The table went silent. Nora pounced, asking Leo what Connor's real job was. Leo swallowed, then said Connor was an assistant, not a director. Connor's face burned red. Then Nora turned to me. "Ellie, what went down at that restaurant? What truth was I about to drop?" I took a deep breath and let it rip. Connor's snide comments, the public breakup, the $450 bill he ditched me with. Connor tried to cut in, saying I was overreacting, but Greg shot him a look that could melt steel. Leo backed me up, showing text where Connor gloated about showing me who's boss. Diane's eyes watered. Frank grunted, unimpressed. Connor snapped, saying I was trying to ruin him, that nobody got his vision. He stood, knocking over a soda can, and yelled that I was lucky he'd slummed it with me for 3 years. Nora gasped. Greg's face darkened. I stayed cool, saying I was only lucky to see his real face. Connor stormed off, kicking a lawn chair. The backyard was dead quiet until Diane, voice shaky, asked me to stay for dessert. We ate peach cobbler in stunned silence, his family apologizing, piecing together Connor's web of lies. Later, Greg pulled me aside, thanking me for being honest, his eyes heavy with shame. Leo walked me to my car, saying Connor was toast at work. I drove home, drained, but free. Then at 5 a.m., my phone blew up. 19 missed calls. What had Connor done now? I woke up to my phone buzzing like a hornet's nest. 19 missed calls staring me down. Diane, Nora, Leo, and some random numbers. What was going on? I called Diane first, her voicemail sounding frantic. She picked up. Voice cracked. After Connor bolted from the barbecue, he'd spiraled. He'd shown up hammered at his ex's apartment at 3 a.m., ranting that I'd wrecked his life. His ex called Nora, who had to drag him out. But it got worse. Connor had spent the night blasting unhinged texts to everyone, threatening Leo's job, sending Jess a novel about my betrayal. Most chilling, he'd texted my address to Tyler, saying I'd pay for humiliating him. Tyler, thank God, sent it to Diane. Instead, I sat on my couch, still in my sleep shirt, trying to process. Diane kept apologizing, saying she didn't recognize her son anymore. I should have been scared, but I was just numb, like I'd run out of feelings. She insisted on coming over to check on me, which sent me into a panic clean of my messy apartment. Dishes, laundry, gone. But when my doorbell rang, my heart stopped. Was it Connor? Diane and Nora showed up with coffee and bagels. Looking as drained as I felt, we crammed around my tiny kitchen table, the one with the chipped edge I keep meaning to replace. Nora spilled more dirt. Connor had a history of this. In high school, he'd faked being on the soccer team, even bought a jersey. He'd lied about dating a cheerleader who barely knew him. It was like he couldn't exist without a made-up life. My phone kept buzzing. Friends texting about Connor's TikTok meltdown, a rambling video about snakes, and haters. Jess was ready to roll up with her cousin, who lifts weights, but I told her to chill. Then my buzzer went off again. I froze. Thinking Connor, Nora checked the window. It was Leo. He'd gotten more manic texts from Connor, including one saying he was coming for me. So there we were, me, Connor's mom, his sister, and his coworker huddled in my living room like a crisis team, trying to figure out how to handle a grown man throwing a tantrum over his own lies. Then my phone pinged with Connor's Instagram story. What had he posted about me? Against Diane's protests, I opened Instagram. Connor had posted a grainy photo of me napping on his couch 2 years ago, mouth open, captioned, "Miss Perfect, who tanked my birthday, ain't so perfect. A girl like you should be grateful I even noticed you." I laughed, startling Nora. That was his big move? A bad picture? If that's all he had, I was golden. But then my landlord called. Connor had tried to storm my building, yelling my name in the lobby until security booted him. He'd screamed I was a lying nobody, loud enough for my neighbors to hear. Diane looked like she might cry. Nora suggested I start a paper trail in case he escalated. We were brainstorming when my buzzer blared again. My stomach dropped. Connor's voice slurred through the intercom. "Ellie, I know you're there. Open the damn door." Leo stood, ready to intervene, but I was already dialing security. I could hear Connor banging, my neighbors shouting at him to shut up. Then silence. Security confirmed he was gone, but still in the parking lot. Diane insisted on going to confront him. What was she about to face? Diane left with Nora to deal with Connor, both looking like they were marching into a storm. Leo stayed, and we split a warm beer I found in the back of my fridge. Classy, I know. He told me Connor had been faking work emails for months, even forging a client's signature once. He was one mistake from being canned. It clicked. Connor's whole life was a house of cards, and I'd accidentally knocked it down. Jess swung by, ready to camp out in case Connor pulled another stunt. We ordered wings and watched trashy reality TV, but I kept checking my phone, half expecting another blow-up. By morning, Nora texted an update. Connor had crashed at his parents' after Diane laid into him, but he'd posted another TikTok, a cryptic rant about karma coming. My group chat was buzzing. Friends, coworkers, even my barista had seen it. Then Leo called. Their boss had caught wind of Connor's social media spiral, and Monday's team meeting was gonna be a bloodbath. I felt a weird mix of relief and dread. Connor was sinking himself, but what if he dragged me down with him? Monday morning, I woke up to a text from Leo. Connor didn't show up to work. He'd emailed their boss an unhinged rant about disloyalty and quit before they could fire him. I sat on my couch, coffee going cold, trying to wrap my head around it. 3 years with a guy who'd built his entire life on lies, and now he was imploding. My phone was still blowing up. Friends sending me Connor's latest TikTok, a blurry clip of him pacing, muttering about fake people. My coworkers were gossiping about it in our group chat. I wanted to crawl under a blanket and hide, but Jess dragged me to brunch to reclaim my vibe. Over mimosas, she made me laugh for the first time in days. But then Nora called. Connor had moved back to his parents' basement, and Diane was a wreck, blaming herself. Nora said he was still texting people about me, claiming I'd sabotaged his career. Sabotaged? I just told the truth. Then she mentioned Connor's laptop, open to a doc with plans about me. My stomach churned. What was he plotting? I met Nora at a coffee shop that afternoon, her eyes puffy from stress. She'd snuck a look at Connor's laptop while he was passed out. The doc was a rambling list. Ways to get back at me, like spreading rumors at my bookstore or posting more old photos. One line mentioned showing up at my work to talk. I felt a chill. This wasn't just petty, it was obsessive. Nora apologized, saying she'd locked the laptop to keep him off it. She was worried he'd do something stupid if he kept spiraling. I thanked her, but my mind was racing. Should I get a restraining order? Tell my boss? I spent the evening with Jess, who was ready to camp out at my place with a baseball bat. We laughed, but I barely slept, jumping at every noise. The next morning, my phone pinged with a DM from a fake Instagram account. The message was pure Connor, you think smart, but you'll regret this. Same bad grammar, same vibe. I blocked it, but my hands were shaking. Then my boss called me in early. Had Connor shown up at my job? I walked into the bookstore, my stomach in knots, expecting chaos. My boss, Priya, pulled me aside, her face serious. A guy had come by that morning, asking for me, but left when she said I wasn't in. The description screamed Connor, hoodie, twitchy, muttering. Priya had told security to flag him, and she gave me the day off to sort things out. I was grateful, but rattled. I called Leo, who said Connor had been texting coworkers, claiming I'd lied to get him fired. The nerve. I spent the day at Jess's, scrolling through Connor's old posts, every business trip, now glaringly fake. That evening, Diane texted, asking to meet. I hesitated. She was his mom, after all, but agreed. We met at a quiet diner, and she looked like she'd aged a decade. She apologized again, saying Connor was in therapy now, but he'd been cut off financially until he got help. She handed me an envelope, cash to cover half the restaurant bill. I didn't want it, but she insisted. As I left, my phone buzzed with another fake Instagram DM. Was Connor watching me? I got home, the envelope from Diane burning a hole in my bag. I didn't want her money. It felt like pity, but I was still paying off that $450 bill, so I kept it. The new DM was creepier. A blurry photo of my apartment building with no caption. My heart raced. Connor? Or was I paranoid? I called building security, who said no one suspicious had been around, but I double-checked my locks anyway. Jess crashed at my place, joking about booby-trapping the door, but I could tell she was worried. The next day, Leo texted. Connor had tried to log into the company server after quitting, triggering a security alert. His desperation was next level. I started documenting everything. DMs, texts, Nora's info, feeling like I was in a bad thriller. Then Nora called, voice shaky. She'd overheard Connor on the phone talking about fixing things with me. She wasn't sure if he meant apologizing or something worse. I thanked her, my mind spinning. Should I confront him? Ignore him? That night, my buzzer went off at 11 p.m. No one spoke through the intercom. Just heavy breathing. Was Connor outside my door again? I stood frozen, staring at my intercom, the heavy breathing crackling through. Jess grabbed her phone, ready to call 911, but the line went dead. Security buzzed up. Nobody was there, just a car peeling out of the lot. My knees wobbled as I sank onto the couch. Was Connor unhinged enough to break in? I barely slept, checking my windows every hour. The next morning, Leo texted. Connor had tried contacting their old coworkers, spinning a story about me, framing him. Nobody bought it. His lies were too obvious now. Nora called, saying Diane had confiscated Connor's phone after finding more creepy DMs to me from burner accounts. She sounded defeated, like she was losing her brother to his own mess. I started carrying pepper spray, just in case, and told Priya at the bookstore to ban Connor from the premises. That afternoon, Jess dragged me to a self-defense class to channel the stress. I was terrible at it, but it felt good to punch something. Then my phone lit up with a voicemail from an unknown number. Connor's voice, slurring. Ellie, we need to talk. My blood ran cold. Was he coming for me? I played the voicemail for Jess, who looked ready to hunt Connor down herself. He rambled about fixing things and making me see, ending with a mumbled sorry before the line cut off. It was unhinged, but weirdly pitiful, like he was unraveling. I saved it for my growing file of evidence, feeling like I was living in a true crime podcast. Nora texted. Connor had snuck out of his parents' house, and Diane was freaking out. They'd found a half-empty whiskey bottle in his room, and he wasn't answering his phone. I wanted to feel bad, but I was too busy looking over my shoulder. At work, Priya showed me security footage from the day Connor stopped by. He'd been pacing outside, hood up, before bolting. It was him, no question. I filed a police report, just a precaution, but the officer's "he's probably just upset" vibe didn't help. That night, Jess and I were binge-watching to distract me when my doorbell rang. No intercom, just knocking. Hard. My heart pounded. Jess grabbed a kitchen knife, whispering, "Stay back." The knocking stopped, but a note slid under my door. What did it say? I crept to the door, Jess hovering like my personal bodyguard. The note was scrawled on a torn receipt. Ellie, I'm sorry. Let's talk. I didn't mean it. My hands shook as I handed it to Jess. Connor's handwriting, messy but unmistakable. We called security, who swept the building. Nothing. He'd slipped away again. I felt trapped, like he was everywhere and nowhere. The next day, Leo met me for lunch, looking stressed. Connor had emailed their boss again, a deranged manifesto blaming me for his unfair exit. The company was considering legal action. Leo said Connor's coworkers were done with him. Nobody believed his victim act anymore. I felt a flicker of relief, but it died when Nora called. Connor had come home trashed, and Diane had checked him into a rehab program. He'd been drinking heavily for months, maybe longer, hiding it from everyone. It explained the slurring, the chaos. Nora said he'd mentioned me in a session, claiming I pushed him to lie. I laughed bitterly. Classic Connor, dodging blame. Then my phone pinged with a text from Diane. She wanted to meet again. What did she want to tell me? Diane asked me to a park bench meetup. Neutral ground. I went, half expecting Connor to jump out of the bushes. She looked exhausted. Her usual warmth dulled. She apologized for the note, the calls, everything, saying rehab was a wake-up call for Connor. He'd admitted to lying about his job for years, even before me, to feel bigger than he was. Diane said he'd brought up our breakup, claiming he panicked at the restaurant because he felt trapped. Trapped? I'd been planning our Mexico trip while he was playing me. She didn't defend him, just said she hoped he'd change. She gave me another envelope, more cash for the restaurant bill, the rest of it. I tried to refuse, but she begged me to take it, like it was her last tie to me. I left, heavy with pity for her. That evening, Jess and I celebrated the paid-off bill with takeout, but my phone buzzed with another fake Instagram account. The message was short. You can't hide forever. My stomach dropped. Connor was in rehab, so who was sending these? Had he found a way to keep this up? I stared at the DM, my heart hammering. Connor was in rehab, locked down, no phone. So who was this? Jess snatched my phone, ready to play detective, but I was already calling Nora. She sounded frazzled, but confirmed Connor hadn't left the facility. Diane had checked. Still, Nora admitted he'd been sneaky before, maybe passing notes to a friend. I felt like I was in a bad spy movie, jumping at shadows. I reported the DM to the police, adding it to my file, but they said without proof it was Connor, their hands were tied. Jess stayed over again, turning my couch into her HQ, complete with energy drinks and a notebook of suspects. We laughed, but the fear lingered. The next day, Leo texted, Tyler, Connor's work buddy, had been acting shady, asking coworkers about me. Could he be the one messaging? I didn't know Tyler well, but he'd laughed when Connor ditched me at the restaurant. My mind spun. Was he covering for Connor? Helping him? That evening, my bookstore's security flagged a guy lurking outside, hoodie up. Same vibe as Connor, but the footage was blurry. Was someone else in on this? I showed Priya the footage at work, and she tightened security, promising to call if anyone sketchy came back. I was paranoid, scanning every customer for Tyler's face. Leo met me after my shift, saying he'd confronted Tyler, who denied everything but seemed nervous, dodging questions about Connor. Leo thought Tyler might have sent the DMs to back up Connor, thinking it'd stay anonymous. I felt a mix of anger and exhaustion. How many people were tangled in Connor's mess? That night, Jess and I went through Tyler's Instagram, finding vague posts about loyalty that screamed Connor's influence. We sent screenshots to the police, but I wasn't holding my breath. Nora called, saying Connor had admitted in rehab to asking Tyler to keep an eye on me before he checked in. Keep an eye? That sounded like stalking. Diane was mortified, promising to get Tyler's number to confront him. I thanked her, but felt uneasy. Connor's reach was longer than I'd thought. Then my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. No words, just a photo of my bookstore's front door. My blood froze. Was Tyler outside right now? I forwarded the photo to Priya and the police, my hands shaking. Jess insisted we stay at her place that night, and I didn't argue. My apartment felt like a target. Security confirmed no one was at the bookstore when the photo was sent, but the timestamp was from my shift. Someone had been watching me. The police questioned Tyler, who claimed he was just joking and hadn't meant to scare me. He admitted Connor had asked him to mess with me, but swore he'd only sent one DM. The photo? He denied it, and the cops had no proof. I was furious. His jokes had me jumping at every creek. Nora texted that Connor was progressing in rehab, owning up to his lies, but still blamed me for pushing him. Classic. Diane sent another apology, saying she'd cut contact with Tyler. I wanted to believe it was over, but the photo haunted me. Who else was Connor manipulating? The next day, Leo called, voice tense. He'd found something on Connor's old work computer, emails he hadn't deleted. They mentioned me, and not in a good way. What had Leo uncovered? Leo met me at a crowded cafe, his laptop open to a folder of emails Connor had sent to himself. They were unhinged. Notes about teaching Ellie a lesson, with bullet points like leak her schedule and make her sweat. One mentioned Tyler helping with small favors. My stomach twisted. This was planned, not just a drunk tantrum. Leo had already forwarded everything to the police and their boss, who was livid about Connor using company resources for this. I felt violated, like Connor had crawled into every corner of my life. The police called later, saying the emails strengthened my case, and they'd bring Tyler in again. I spent the evening with Jess, trying to shake the creeped out feeling. She made me block every unknown number and set my socials to private. Nora texted. Connor's rehab counselor had confronted him about the emails, and he'd broken down, admitting he'd wanted to control the narrative. Control? He'd lost that months ago. Then my doorbell rang. No intercom. Jess grabbed her keys like a weapon. A package sat outside. No label. What was inside? Jess and I stared at the unmarked package like it was a bomb. My heart pounded as she nudged it with her foot. Nothing ticked at least. I called security, who opened it on camera. Just my old hoodie, one I'd left at Connor's ages ago, with a sticky note saying, "You forgot this." Connor's handwriting. I shivered. He'd sent it from rehab somehow, or had someone drop it off. The police added it to my file, but with no direct threat, they couldn't act. Nora called, horrified. Connor had smuggled a letter to a rehab buddy to mail it. Diane was cooperating with the facility to lock him down tighter. I felt like I was being hunted, even with him miles away. Jess made me stay at her place again, turning it into a sleepover with bad rom-coms to keep me sane. The next day, Leo texted. Tyler had confessed to sending the bookstore photo under pressure from Connor, who'd promised him future favors. Tyler was facing charges for harassment. I felt a flicker of justice, but my nerves were shot. Then Diane texted, asking for one last meeting. What could she possibly want now? I met Diane at a quiet bakery, her hands trembling around her coffee mug. She looked broken, like she'd been carrying Connor's chaos too long. She said rehab was working. Connor was finally owning his lies, even apologizing for the hoodie stunt. He'd written me a letter, she said, but she hadn't brought it. Thought it might upset me. I nodded, not wanting it anyway. Diane admitted she'd enabled him, ignoring red flags since he was a kid, hoping he'd grow out of it. She cried, saying she saw me as family and hated losing me. I hugged her, torn between pity and relief to be done. She left me with a final check, full repayment for the restaurant bill, plus extra. I took it, knowing it was her way of closing this chapter. Driving home, I felt lighter, like I'd shed some of Connor's weight. But that night, Jess found a new fake Instagram account following me. No posts, just a bio. Truth hurts. My stomach sank. Connor was locked away. Tyler was in trouble. So who was behind this? I blocked it, but sleep didn't come. Was this ever going to end? The next morning, I woke to a text from Leo. He'd traced the new Instagram account to an IP address linked to one of Connor's old coworkers. Not Tyler. Someone else was still in his orbit, maybe acting on their own. I was done playing whack-a-mole with these creeps. I met with the police, handing over every DM, email, and the hoodie note. They agreed to investigate the coworker, a guy named Zach, who'd always been tight with Connor. Nora called, saying Connor had admitted in therapy to inspiring Zach to defend him, thinking it'd scare me into silence. I laughed bitterly. Silence wasn't my style anymore. Priya gave me a week off work to breathe, and Jess dragged me to a pottery class to smash things legally. I sucked at it, but it helped. That evening, Leo swung by with pizza, saying Zach had been fired for misusing company systems. The police were closing in. I felt a spark of hope. Maybe I was finally safe. Then my phone buzzed with a voicemail from Zach's number. "Ellie, you're making a mistake." My hands went cold. What did he want from me? I played the voicemail on speaker, Jess and Leo leaning in. Zach's voice was low, almost smug. "You think you've won, Ellie, but Connor's not done. You'll see." It cut off abruptly, like he'd hung up mid-thought. I forwarded it to the police, my pulse racing. Jess was ready to track Zach down herself, but Leo calmed her, saying the cops were already on him. Nora texted. Connor had been confronted about Zach in rehab and swore he'd cut contact, but his track record wasn't exactly trustworthy. The police called later, confirming Zach had sent the message to rattle me, acting alone after Connor's encouragement. They'd issued a warning, and Zach was backing off, but I wasn't convinced. I started carrying my phone everywhere, even to the bathroom, checking locks obsessively. Jess moved in for a few days, turning my place into a fortress of takeout boxes and moral support. Then Priya called. Security had caught someone on camera near the bookstore again, not Zach or Connor. My heart sank. Was there another player in Connor's game, or was I just paranoid? Who was watching me now? I showed Priya the new footage, my stomach in knots. The figure was too grainy to ID, but it wasn't Connor or Zach. Wrong build, wrong walk. The police reviewed it, suggesting it could be a random loiterer, but I wasn't buying it. Connor's chaos had me seeing threats everywhere. Jess and Leo rallied, helping me install a cheap security camera at my apartment. Nora called. Connor was still in rehab, now on a stricter no-contact rule after the Zach mess. Diane had hired a lawyer to keep him in line. I felt a flicker of safety, but the mystery figure gnawed at me. Then Leo dug deeper into Connor's old work emails, finding a thread where he'd bragged to a random intern about handling me. The intern had quit months ago, but could he be the lurker? The police tracked him down. He'd moved states, no connection. I was chasing ghosts. That night, Jess and I toasted with coffee, laughing at my paranoia. My phone stayed quiet. No DMs, no voicemails. For the first time in weeks, I slept through the night. Was the nightmare finally over? 3 months later, I'm breathing easier. Connor finished rehab and moved to his uncle's in Oregon. According to Nora, his social media's dead, and Diane says he's in therapy, facing the lies he built his life on. She still sends me Christmas cards. Sweet, but heavy with guilt. Zach got a fine for harassment and vanished from the scene. The bookstore figure was never ID'd, probably just a creep passing through. I got a restraining order against Connor, just in case, but he hasn't reached out. My apartment's mine again. I repainted, ditched Connor's old gifts, and hung fairy lights to make it feel warm. Jess is still my rock, crashing over for wine and reality TV. Leo's a friend now, too. We grab burgers and joke about the saga that brought us together. I'm not the Ellie who ignored red flags, thinking love meant excusing cruelty. That $450 bill was the price of my freedom, and I'd pay it again. Sometimes I check my locks twice, but I'm not scared anymore. I'm stronger than Connor's lies, and I've got people who'll fight for me. The phones stopped ringing. I'm finally free.